Anyone who looks after an animal, you have an obligation to that animal to give it a good life, for it to be well cared for, well looked after. But part of a good life is having a good death. And any animal that suffers to death or suffers around death is something that I really think we can improve upon. No matter what animal you're dealing with, when you're approaching the end of life, you're never sure when that call should be made. The guidelines we go by is if the animal is in consistent pain, if you feel like the quality of life isn't good and isn't likely to improve, or if there are physical signs from an animal, things like emaciation, if the animal's losing weight, if you can tell they're uncomfortable and they're not doing well, they're starting to lose body condition, if they won't eat, and if it's a situation where they're not going to improve. If you've got a bird with an obviously broken leg or wing that you aren't in a position to be able to fix, you know that's not going to get better, and suffering going through that, even if it does eventually heal itself, is not going to be worth it for the animal. So I think it has to be a cost-benefit analysis of how much discomfort there is versus the likelihood of that animal getting into a good frame of life again. I think people underestimate the relief that they can give an animal, the deliverance from pain they can give them if they do euthanize at the appropriate time. Whether you have 100,000 chickens or one chicken, it's still an incredibly emotionally difficult thing to do. Some people are more emotional than others and have a far harder time with it, and it depends on the method you use. I think what's really important for anyone who has animals is to have a euthanasia plan, and to plan it out when you don't need it, ahead of time. When you're sitting at your kitchen table and you're calm and collected and really thinking about the best thing to do. It's not necessary for any owner or worker to have to euthanize, but they need to know what to do and who to call. So if you have a neighbor that is someone who, say, hunts and is good with slaughtering animals, and they would be okay with it, or you have a friend that isn't emotionally attached to your animals and would be willing to help out, then your euthanasia plan would be to have everything prepared and then call someone to help you. A lot of people think that it is their responsibility and feel that they should be the ones to do it. It's important to realize that it's going to be upsetting and you're going to be emotional when you do it. And so it's always going to feel really hard and really difficult. You need to know that going in so you're prepared for it. If you're confident that the method you're using is humane, it's a lot easier to perform. I think a big part of the problem that people who aren't exposed to this very often is that when they decide to do something to euthanize their animal, they're not even sure they're doing the right thing. They're not sure that they've got the best method or that what they're doing is going to accomplish what they want. And so it makes it that much harder still to do it. If you're hesitant when you do any of the methods of euthanasia, you will be much more likely to have a problem and make a mistake. So if you want to use decapitation, but you can't bring yourself to make the deep cut, if you go to cervically dislocate and you can't bring yourself to actually pull hard on the neck to make sure it dislocates, then what you're going to do is cause yourself and the animal a whole lot more distress. So knowing your procedure, knowing what you want to do and feeling confident in it is a big step along the way of both feeling better about doing it and doing it properly. For an animal to be euthanized, for them to have what we consider a good death or a humane death, it's really important for them not to be feeling pain or fear. So whatever method you use to kill that bird needs to make them unconscious quickly. And then if they die slowly or quickly after that point, as long as they never regain consciousness, that will be good for the welfare of the animal. So at the end of the day, the measurement of success for euthanasia is not whether the bird ends up dead or not, but it's the process of how they got there and how quickly they became unconscious and their suffering was ended. And it's important, if you are going to euthanize a bird, that you know what the measurements are for a bird to be unconscious. A bird's balance, the same as us, is in their ears. Birds have such a long neck that if you hold a bird and it allows its head to flop down, it'll be unconscious. A conscious bird will never let its head go down because it'll hold its ears up, right? So that's one way of checking. Another one is you can touch right near the eyeball. So if you touch what's called the canthus of the eye, the corner of the eye, the bird will blink, and they have a third eyelid that you can see very obviously moving across the eye. That's been shown to only disappear very, very close to death. So if the bird doesn't have that third eyelid covering the eye when the area near the eye is touched, they are dead, or essentially they're dead. You can tell a bird, you can tell with rhythmic breathing. If the bird's still breathing, they're obviously not dead. That doesn't mean they're conscious, but it's a measure of death. There are different responses to pain. So if you pinch their comb or pinch their toes, if they don't pull away, that's an indication of unconsciousness. However, if you have a very sick bird, they may not pull away anyway, just because of how sick they are. So it's not the best measure. It's difficult to tell you all the unacceptable methods for euthanasia. Again, if you keep in mind that your goal is to make the bird unconscious quickly, then it's easier to figure out what is acceptable and what is not. So drowning, freezing, suffocation, burial, any of those things will not make the bird unconscious quickly, and they will suffer the entire time until they die. If you use something like blunt force trauma that makes them unconscious quickly, and then they die from the trauma of that, although it's distasteful, it is very humane. Decapitation makes the bird unconscious very quickly. Cervical dislocation does. So you need to think about whether or not the method you're going to use will make the bird unconscious very quickly. If it doesn't, then it's not really considered acceptable.